After the 2008 crash, exactly one country on Earth sent its bankers to prison. The same country once beat the Royal Navy with a pair of scissors. And in 2010, it grounded an entire continent without firing a single shot. Oh good, humans. Let's see what they've done now. Welcome to Iceland. 380,000 people, more sheep than humans, almost no trees, and quite possibly the most functional place your species has ever built. I've watched this island claw its way out of the freezing Atlantic for over 1,000 years. It is gloriously, defiantly weird. Let's begin. Meet Iceland, a volcanic island parked just below the Arctic Circle, sitting right on the crack between two continents. It straddles the line where the North American and Eurasian plates are slowly pulling apart, about 2 centimeters a year. The island is literally tearing in half. It's a land of fire and ice, glaciers on top, magma underneath, the most volcanically active place on the planet, and one of the emptiest countries in Europe. People showed up late. Around the year 874, Norse settlers, you'll know them as Vikings, sailed over and decided this frozen rock was home. Quick prank that's lasted centuries. The greenish icy one is called Iceland, and the actual ice-covered one next door is called Greenland. Marketing. In 930, the settlers founded the All Thing, an open-air assembly to make laws and settle feuds. It's one of the oldest parliaments on Earth. No king, no castle, just chieftains arguing on a cold lava field. Democracy, Viking edition. They wrote it all down in the sagas. Epic tales of heroes, feuds, and people killing each other over sheep and honor. They also chopped down nearly all the trees. To this day, there's a joke. What do you do if you get lost in an Icelandic forest? Stand up. Now, the elves. Yes, really. A surprising number of Icelanders won't flat out rule out the hidden people, elves, said to live in the rocks. Construction projects have genuinely been rerouted to avoid disturbing elf rocks. Roads bent around boulders, just in case. I have scanned this planet for 1,000 years and never once detected an elf. But honestly, I admire the commitment. You can also dive into a flooded rift between the plates and touch 2 continents at once. North America in one hand, Europe in the other. For centuries, Iceland wasn't its own boss. It was ruled from afar. First Norway, then Denmark, who kept a tight grip on its trade. Then, in 1783, a volcano called Loki erupted for 8 months. It poisoned the air, killed most of the livestock, and caused a famine that took roughly 1/5 of the population. The haze drifted across Europe and disrupted the weather for years. One Icelandic volcano quietly wrecking harvests a continent away. Iceland slowly clawed back control and finally became a fully independent republic in 1944, while Denmark was busy being occupied in the war. Here's a strange one. Iceland banned beer. Not all alcohol, just beer. The ban on full-strength beer lasted all the way until 1989. Spirits and wine were fine. Beer was the designated villain. When it was finally legalized, the 1st of March became an unofficial beer day. Then there were the Cod Wars. Yes, wars about fish against Britain. Iceland kept extending the waters it claimed for fishing. Britain disagreed and sent the Royal Navy. Iceland had basically no military, just a few patrol boats. So the Icelanders invented a beautifully petty weapon, a net cutter dragged behind their boats that sliced the British trawlers' nets clean off. After ramming, net snipping, and threatening to kick out a NATO base, tiny Iceland won. Britain backed down. A country with no army beat the Royal Navy over fish. Fish made Iceland comfortable. For most of its modern life, the economy basically was cod. Then, in the early 2000s, Iceland got bored of fish. It decided it wanted to be a global banking superpower instead. Its 3 small banks went on an insane borrowing spree, ballooning to nearly 10 times the size of the entire country's economy. Then, 2008 happened. The banks collapsed. One of the biggest financial crashes, relative to size, any country has ever had. Savers across Europe who'd parked money in flashy Icelandic online accounts suddenly couldn't get it back. The whole country was, briefly, broke. But here's what makes Iceland different. Instead of quietly bailing the bankers out and moving on, they prosecuted them. Dozens of top bankers were investigated, and several actually went to prison. A genuinely radical concept. Consequences. Iceland let the banks fail, jailed the culprits, and clawed its way back. Within a few years, it was booming again. And what powered the comeback? A volcano. In 2010, Eyjafjallajökull erupted. Its ash cloud grounded over 100,000 flights and shut down most of Europe's airspace for days. Every news anchor on Earth tried and failed to pronounce it. It was chaos, but it put Iceland on every screen on the planet. Suddenly, everyone wanted to see this dramatic volcanic island. Tourism exploded. A country of 380,000 now hosts well over 1 million visitors a year. Come for the waterfalls, geysers, and lava. Almost all of Iceland's heat and power comes from underground, geothermal, and hydro. They heat their homes and swimming pools with volcano power. Now back to the wonderfully strange. Iceland has an official naming committee that decides whether you're allowed to call your baby a particular name. A name has to fit Icelandic grammar and the alphabet. Parents have genuinely gone to court for the right to use a rejected name. Most Icelanders don't even have family surnames. Your last name is just your dad's first name plus son or daughter, which is why the phone book is famously sorted by first name, and why everyone's on first name terms, including with the president. It's so small and interrelated, there's genuinely an app to check you're not about to date a cousin. When the 2008 crash hit, even McDonald's gave up and left the country entirely. An Icelander bought the very last burger and fries and put them on display. Years later, they still haven't rotted, live streamed in a glass case. At Christmas, Iceland doesn't have one Santa. It has 13 mischievous Yule lads with names like Door Slammer, Spoon Licker, and Sausage Swiper. And a giant Christmas cat that, according to legend, eats anyone who didn't get new clothes for the holiday. Festive. Despite the tiny population, Iceland's football team reached the 2018 World Cup, the smallest country ever to qualify, after knocking England out of the Euros. Their fans gave the world the slow, thunderous Viking clap, a nation of 380,000 outroaring stadiums of millions. It has no standing army at all and is regularly ranked the most peaceful country on Earth. It tops the world for gender equality and elected one of the world's first female presidents back in 1980. Iceland is so bubbling with geothermal energy that it gave the world a word. The original spouting hot spring here is literally called geyser. That's where geyser comes from. Nearby, a smaller one called Strokur erupts every few minutes, on schedule, like the island is just showing off. The food can be a challenge. A traditional delicacy is fermented shark, which smells so aggressive it's usually chased with a spirit nicknamed Black Death. But they also have my favorite tradition on this planet, the Christmas book flood. On Christmas Eve, everyone gives each other books and spends the night reading. Here's a small mercy. Iceland is one of the only places on Earth with essentially no mosquitoes. They just never settled in. And in 1968, the whole country switched which side of the road it drives on, overnight. They called it H-Day, and somehow it went fine. In 1973, a volcano erupted right next to a fishing town on the Westman Islands, and a wall of lava began creeping toward the harbor. So the islanders did something insane. They sprayed the advancing lava with millions of tons of seawater to cool and stop it. And it worked. They saved the harbor. Iceland is also a geneticist's dream. The population is so small and well documented that nearly the whole nation's DNA has been mapped. A country-sized family tree. Reykjavik is the most northerly capital city on Earth, and it's where most Icelanders actually live, huddled against the cold. One of its biggest attractions is the Blue Lagoon, a milky blue geothermal spa that is essentially the warm runoff from a power plant. Glorious. And when Icelanders get angry, they get creative. After the 2008 crash, crowds gathered outside Parliament and banged pots and pans until the government resigned. For 380,000 people, it punches absurdly above its weight in culture, too. It gave the world Björk and a music scene way bigger than its size. It even has a Nobel Prize in literature. And the language has changed so little in 1,000 years that Icelanders can still read the original medieval sagas. The wildlife is its own show. Millions of puffins nest on the cliffs every summer. Adorable. And historically, also dinner. Depending on the season, the sky does the impossible. Endless summer daylight, then winters lit by green ribbons of northern lights. For centuries, with almost no wood, Icelanders built their homes out of the land itself. Cozy houses made of turf and grass. Every autumn, the country still rounds up the sheep that roamed free all summer in a centuries-old event called the Rettir. And in peak Iceland fashion, it has literally exported bottled fresh air and glacier water, selling more or less nothing. All of this on an island where glaciers still cover about 1/10 of the land, sitting right on top of all that fire. So let's add it up. A frozen volcanic rock, no trees, more sheep than people, that built one of the oldest parliaments, jailed its bankers, reroutes roads for elves, vets baby names, and shut down a continent's air travel with one volcano. It banned beer, beat the Royal Navy with a pair of scissors, fought lava with a garden hose, and turned a financial apocalypse into a tourism goldmine. It even gives each other books for Christmas and reads itself to sleep. Honestly, who's doing it better? Of all the tiny places I've watched flatly refuse to fail, Iceland might be the most stubborn. It just handles things. Anyway, that's Iceland, the island that runs on volcanoes, folklore, and pure Nordic stubbornness. Honestly, magnificent. Don't tell the elves I said that.